What's on your playlist right now?
In my class.
Go to guilty pleasure food.
Ice cream.
Ice cream.
Greetings, I'm Kayton Carter, currently holding the position of Executive Director of Academic Advising Enrichment for undergraduate education at UC Davis. I'm also a doctoral candidate at the UC Davis School of Education, where my research focuses on evaluating the impact of our Black Male Mentoring Program on its participants. Prior to my current role, I was the founding Executive Director of the Student Affairs Retention Initiatives and the inaugural Director of the Center for African Diaspora Student Success, also known as CADSS. In my work at UC Davis, I'm fortunate to have the opportunity both to create new systems of support for underrepresented populations and to have personal relationships with many of them.
Kayton, welcome to Face to Face.
Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
I appreciate you being here with us. And tell me who you've brought with you today.
Well, can I have her introduce herself?
Absolutely.
All right.
Hi, Chancellor. It's nice to see you. My name is Stephanie Zarate. I'm one of the advising and outreach coordinators at the Global Learning Hub. That falls under Global Affairs. My first experience working with students was actually in 2016 at the Center for African Diaspora Student Success as a student assistant. So Kayton is my old boss.
Well, Stephanie, thank you for being here as well. It's great to have you both to talk about this really important topic. So let me just get started with you, Kayton.
Yes.
How did you decide to take on the job of being the founding executive director of our retention initiatives at UC Davis? What need did you see that needed to be fulfilled? What gap had to be fulfilled?
Wow. Great question. I appreciate it. So it really stemmed from my previous role as a student affairs officer in African American African Studies, where part of my responsibility was kind of keeping a finger on the pulse of the African diaspora community. And I didn't think I had the capacity to do that as one person. Fortunately, I had a template in the Office of Minority Student Affairs at Michigan State that I could draw from. And then I had friends that were still there that I could reach back and collaborate and communicate with. And those ideas are what led to what is now the Student Affairs Retention Initiative. So the idea behind the initiatives is that we would dedicate, our institution, UC Davis, would commit full-time staff to keeping a finger on the pulse of our underrepresented minority communities.
Well, thanks to Michigan State for the idea and for you. So, Stephanie, did you benefit from the student retention initiatives when you were a student here? And if so, how? How did it affect you?
Yeah, I originally came from a really small town in the Central Valley, Riverbank, California. And so when I came to Davis, it's actually the student population is even bigger than the town I come from. So coming from such a small space and then being able to come over to like such new horizons overall really, built a new perspective for me. So in general, my time as a student assistant at CADSS was the first experience I ever had with like face-to-face interaction and kind of gaining a perspective on like how to bring quality care, how to respect one another, how to bring positivity and joy in like everything that you do, whether it's just, offering center materials for students or whether it's like planning events. And my time there really motivated me to go into the field of higher education. So I originally came in with an idea that kind of was instilled in my parents of work as hard as ever, but do something that, may be what we typically think of success, whether it's like a doctor, a lawyer, et cetera. And whenever I started working with students and working with great mentors like Kayton and Kwame and Ken Barnes, that really brought into perspective what I really want to do with my time, and that's helping other people, and that's through education.
Well, that's what we want for all of our students during their time here, to find what gives them fulfillment and passion and what they like to do. So I'm glad it worked out in your case. Staying on your time as a student, though, and as a student assistant, are there other resources that you thought could have been beneficial to the center that you're thinking about implementing now in your new role?
That's a great question. So like I mentioned previously, I work under Global Affairs, which its main mission is to bring interconnectedness between everyone. And that really weaves into my current role now because we, in the advising and outreach team, we promote different services for students, whether it's academic, experiential opportunities, or co-curricular, extracurricular opportunities for students. And we really want to bring awareness and accessibility to underrepresented minority students. And I think that with my current role and the interactions that, the retention centers have, we are hoping to possibly stay connected with them and offer those services at the centers themselves, whether it's maybe drop-in advising or more student interactions within the centers.
Sounds like you really have your finger on what's needed. That's important. Kayton, I want to turn back to you.
Yes, sir.
I want to hear about your own personal journey, your story, and how that impacted or manifests itself now in what you do for our students here at Davis.
It was one of the main reasons, my personal experience was one of the main reasons why I entered into the student affairs profession, quite frankly. I was a community college transfer student at UC Berkeley in the early 90s. And I realized, I must clarify that I attended 6 community colleges before transitioning to Berkeley. And if I could be very transparent, I got dismissed after my first year. I changed my major 3 times, and I thought, I'm not the only one. I can't be the only one trying to figure things out, right? And it was an advisor/administrator that turned me on to the interdisciplinary major at UC Berkeley. But then I started inquiring about how can I do what you do, right? I thought that I wanted to be a teacher, which I did do temporarily at Berkeley High continuation after I finished at UC Berkeley. And then I wanted to have more involvement or more impact into the lives of students beyond subject matter, right? And so that's when I went to, I did a post-bac program called the Institute for Recruitment of Teachers, IRT. It was on the campus of Phillips Academy in Andover, Massachusetts. And that's how I ended up getting a scholarship for my master's degree at Michigan State. But understanding the student affairs, understanding the impact of student affairs via some practicums that I had as a master's student, it was required that you work in certain fields. I landed a graduate assistantship in the Office of Minority Student Affairs. Prior to that, I had no knowledge of what minority student affairs was, right? But therein lies an entity who, on behalf of the entire institution, kept that finger on the pulse of the underrepresented populations. And so when I transitioned back to California, and more importantly came here to UC Davis, I was looking around for the Office of Minority Student Affairs, right? And I realized that I think the time was very important. The time was we needed something more than the student affairs officers. I must clarify, I was one of 5 ethnic studies student affairs officers. And all of us had the same responsibility, which was kind of a 50% appointment of looking at the populations that we were responsible for. And fortunately, I was able to kind of inquire with the leadership at that time, wrote a proposal, and it was embraced. And my original concept was a centralized space, not the individual spaces. And honestly, I really appreciate the individual spaces, but my context was not that, right? And so I want to kind of give credit to previous leadership for saying, hey, let's look at some separate spaces and separate staff, because the template that I had at Michigan State was a centralized office. But I say all that, Chancellor May, to say there are a lot of, and Stephanie referred to this earlier, co-curricular needs that may not be satisfied in certain majors, right? And then there's I like to refer to it as cross-pollinating, right? You have a lot of people that identify as a specific ethnicity, but they're in separate majors. And so where would there be an opportunity for them to interact if not for these retention centers in these spaces? So it allows a chance for students to build community, which supports the research. Sense of belonging is one of the barriers to underrepresented minority student success. And that's what the centers offered, along with curricular and co-curricular support. So that was the foundation.
Well, thanks. Your story is such a testimony to what can be, right? Mm-hmm. So I appreciate all of that and what you're doing now. And I'm curious, in that respect, what you're doing now, what's your vision for advising at UC Davis going forward?
If I could, I would say standardizing the practice, right? UC Davis is a decentralized campus when it comes to advising. And so advising looks a little bit different in engineering than it does in athletics, which looks different than how it is in student affairs. But there are some common threads that we can land on. First and foremost, a holistic advising philosophy, where we're looking at the entire student, not just course content and schedules and things of that sort. And then because our student population has grown so much, we can infuse other best practices or promising practices like advising students with disabilities, trauma-informed advising, right? And so the standardization of the practice does not take away from the authenticity in the individual spaces, but that's one of the main goals, making sure that at the very least, all of our advisors are taking a more holistic approach to supporting our students.
So I'm hearing consistency.
Yes, sir.
And best practices.
Yes, sir.
And those are things that I've heard and observed myself. So I applaud that, and I'm 100% in support of that direction.
Thank you.
Now I got a question for both of you.
Okay.
What do you find most fulfilling about your work at the end of the day?
Oh, my goodness.
I would say, going through the experience as a student, having, mentors and, the advising community that really wanted to get to know me, get to know what my passions were, wanting to get to know the other students and wanting us to all to work together. I think now what really is a great enjoyment in my current role is being able to get to know the student and know exactly what their interests are and how I can help them find an opportunity that may be aligning with their interests, and just sitting down and having a very informal conversation sometimes and being able to just connect and then let them know that, we're here for them. And if they ever want to chat more, it's an open door situation.
Okay.
Wow. I'm actually 2.5 years into this role as Executive Director of Academic Advising, which means for the first time in 25 plus years, I don't have direct contact with students. But I'm a systems guy. And so what's appealing to me is making sure that number one, I understand the different systems in the academic advising spaces, and that we fine tune those systems and infuse best practices and research. Right. As a trained student affairs practitioner, I always like to rely or refer to the research that governs the practice. And so I'd really like us as an entire institution to kind of rely on the research. And some of it is taking place throughout the campus. But again, standardizing that across the campus is a goal for me.
So that we're evidence-based.
Yes, sir.
So I think we would all agree, though, the best part of our jobs is the students.
Oh,
Yeah.
without a
Right?
doubt.
Yeah.
Without a
Yeah.
doubt.
So we all concur on that one. Now, there's a feature in face-to-face that we call hot seat, and it's actually not a hot seat, but all we do is ask some really rapid-fire questions where we're looking for a one-word or one sentence
my goodness.
answer. So are you ready? Here
Sure.
we go. All right. Favorite event on campus?
Davis Fest.
Picnic day.
Okay. I agree with both of those.
Okay.
Favorite place you've traveled to?
Rome.
Guanajuato, Mexico.
Rome I have been to. Great location. Best spot to get lunch on campus?
Ooh.
We were just talking about this. I would say Spokes.
Spokes.
I'm going to go with Gun Rock and the new menu they have,
Gun
given
Rock.
I'm just coming to this space from there.
Okay,
So
yeah.
I like Gun Rock's new menu.
All right, good for both places. Halloween's coming up. Give me your favorite Halloween costume you have worn.
Have worn. Wow.
I have one actually from last year. I dressed up as a dog that's in flames, holding, with the little blurb saying, "This is fine." So, yes, that was my costume.
Honestly, I haven't done Halloween in a while, but my last costume was one of the Jackson 5. Big afro, bell bottoms.
You were like a generic Jackson
I
5
was a
member, or
generic
you
Jackson.
were
I was a
particular
Jackson
one?
6.
Okay. Okay. I asked this question of all the guests.
Okay.
Tell me what's at the top of your playlist right now.
Ooh.
I'm listening to spooky music right now. The soundtrack from They Live. I just saw that movie for the first time. So
Wow, that is spooky.
I like reggae. Can I pick two?
Sure.
Stephen Marley and Chronix. Chronix has a song called Here Comes Trouble. And Stephen Marley actually did a tribute to his father in a most recent song where he kind of covers the progression of his development and his father, Bob Marley.
I have to check that out. I'm an old school reggae. I like Steel Pulse.
Oh, Steel Pulse, yes. Can't go wrong. True Democracy. And, yes.
Okay, now it's your turn. You can ask me any question you would like.
yeah, looking at your entire trajectory as chancellor, what's the legacy that you hope to leave behind for UC Davis students?
That's a great question, Stephanie. And I always say in anything I do, this job or other jobs I've had, you want to leave the organization better than the way you found it. Mm-hmm. So I'd like for students, faculty, staff, community members at UC Davis to say when Chancellor May retires or moves on that the university is better because he was here.
Beautiful. You know, there's a richness that I find in the student body in terms of the diversity. And when I say diversity, I'm not restricting that statement to ethnicity nor gender. And what do you feel are the benefits of having a very robust, diverse student body?
So I always go back to diversity gives you better outcomes. And I'll just give a simple example, which is somewhat oversimplified. If we didn't have gender diversity, it would be like using half of your brain, because half of the population would be left out of your solutions. So in the same way, I feel like having all of the brain power, all the talents that we have collectively working on our issues and problems and our society just makes things turn out better. So that's really been my guiding principle about diversity.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah, one other question that I had was more in relation to your personal focus on like student interaction. What types of student interactions are you most proud of during your time here at UC Davis?
This is going to sound a little trite, but I enjoy almost all student interactions. But the one that's the most fun that actually is kind of unexpected is when I'm walking across campus and I get asked for selfies.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Which I have to now factor in selfie time when I go to a meeting because I do get asked a lot. And I'm gratified that the students think enough of me to want to take pictures with me and engage with me. And, sometimes the goal of a scavenger hunt is to get a selfie with the chancellor and that sort of thing. So that's really makes my day whenever it happens. So, I just want to thank you both for spending time with us on Face to Face. I think this was a great interview. I appreciate your coming, and I appreciate you for what you're doing for our campus, both of you. And thanks to everyone who's watching. We'll see you next time on Face to Face. Go Ags.